On May 14, 1852, in a river town outside Natchez, Mississippi, the square was already crowded before sunrise. Men with ledgers, women with parasols, preachers pretending not to look, traders with coffee-stained breath. They had come for one reason, her. But the platform was bare. No chains, no girl. Only a freshly nailed oak placard, its letters carved so deep they bled sap. Touch her and die. No signature, no owner's mark, just the warning. Witnesses later said the wood smelled wrong. Not fresh cut, burned, old, as if it had been pulled from a grave. The sheriff ordered it removed. 2 men stepped forward. Neither touched it, because beneath the warning, half hidden by the grain, were names. Dozens of them. Some scratched out, some circled, some marked with a cross. Every name belonged to a man already dead. Sudden deaths, falls from horses, fevers that arrived overnight. A banker who locked himself in his office and was found clawing the walls. And all of them had attended auctions. By mid-morning, whispers spread faster than the river current. They said the girl had been seen days earlier, brought in under canvas, escorted by armed men who would not sleep. They said no chains ever touched her skin. They said the traders rotated every 4 hours, because anyone who stayed too long began to shake. The town preacher canceled morning service. The bells never rang. And somewhere in the holding quarters behind the square, a girl sat alone, unnamed in records, unpriced in ledgers, while men argued whether she could even be sold at all. Because everyone who tried to claim her didn't last long enough to sign the paper. This is not a ghost story. This is an American story, and the documents that survive call her only one thing: the asset that would not obey. Slave ledgers were meticulous. Every tooth noted, every scar counted, every body reduced to ink. But in the Natchez records of 1852, there is a gap. 3 full pages torn clean out, and between the missing sheets, a single notation written in a different hand. Held separately, no bill issued, instructions pending. She arrived from Louisiana by river, transferred at night. No origin plantation listed. No family line traced. No price assigned. That alone violated protocol. Witnesses described her as young, perhaps 17, but time seemed uncertain around her. Some said her eyes were too old. Others said she never blinked when spoken to. What made men uneasy wasn't beauty alone. It was control. She did not cry, did not beg, did not flinch. When examined, she stood still, not in submission, but in refusal. One trader wrote that it felt like standing before a locked door that knew your name. Her skin bore no whip marks. That frightened them most of all. A physician was called to inspect her health. He stayed 12 minutes. When he emerged, his hands were shaking. He refused payment. He left town by noon. That evening, a private meeting was held in the vestry of the local church. Traders, magistrates, and a visiting seminary representative discussed whether the girl could be classified as defective property. One man proposed sending her north. Another suggested destroying the records and claiming she drowned in transit. The seminary man said nothing. He only asked one question: "Has she spoken?" The answer was yes. Only once. To a boy assigned to bring her water. She looked at him and said calmly, "They will not keep me." The boy later testified that when she spoke, the room felt smaller, as if the walls leaned in to listen. That night, the first guard died. He was found seated upright, eyes open, key still in his hand. No wounds, just an expression of absolute recognition. When fear outgrows profit, institutions step in. By the 3rd day, no buyer would approach the holding quarters. Men crossed the street rather than pass the door. Women complained of headaches when near the building. So the church intervened. Officially, she was transferred for moral supervision and temporary protection. Unofficially, the seminary wanted her hidden. The church outside Natchez was old, older than its records admitted. Built over land once used as a burial ground. Its foundations were rumored to be misaligned with purpose. She was brought there before sunrise. No chains, just 4 men walking far enough away that no one brushed her sleeve. Inside the seminary, she was placed in a dormitory room that had not been used in years. The other students were told it was condemned. That night, 3 novices woke screaming. They said someone had been praying in a language they didn't know, but understood perfectly. The head rector ordered silence. He instructed the scribes to begin a spiritual evaluation. What they wrote never reached the archives, but fragments survived in private letters. She does not confess. She does not deny. She listens as if measuring us. She asked why our God needed permission to forgive. When I told her she belonged to the Lord now, she smiled. The church renamed her, not with a Christian name, with a designation. Subject E. They believed that by removing her identity, they could neutralize whatever followed her. They were wrong. Within a week, the seminary's bell rope snapped, cleanly, as if cut. The rector fell ill, and every night at exactly 3:17 a.m., someone knocked once on every locked door in the building. No one ever stood in the hallway, but the girl's room was always unlocked by morning. Ownership requires witnesses. In June of 1852, 3 men attempted to formalize a claim. A plantation investor, a shipping magnate, and a retired judge. They met in the seminary office after evening prayer. Papers were prepared, ink poured. The girl was brought in, not dragged, not forced. She walked. The judge read the claim aloud. His voice trembled on the final sentence. When he asked if she understood, she answered softly, "Yes." Then she asked him a question. "What will you call yourself when I am gone?" No one laughed. The investor reached for her wrist. He never touched it. He froze, fingers hovering, breath caught like he'd seen something behind her eyes. Witnesses said he began whispering names. His mother's, his first wife's, a child that had died unnamed. He collapsed before contact was made. The magnate stood and backed away. The judge dropped the pen. By dawn, all 3 men were dead. Natural causes were listed. The seminary burned the papers. That same day, the oak placard appeared back in the town square. "Touch her and die." This time, someone added a line beneath it. Smaller letters. Careful handwriting. Ownership is a lie we tell God. And somewhere behind church walls, the girl sat alone, still unsold, still unnamed, while America quietly decided she would be forgotten. Every institution believes paper can tame reality. So the seminary opened a new ledger, bound in black leather, numbered, locked in a cabinet behind the rector's office. It was meant to contain her, through language, classification, and prayer. They titled it, Special Holdings, Moral Irregularities. Subject E was the first entry. The pages began formally, height, posture, behavior, responsiveness to scripture. But by the third entry, the handwriting changed. Margins filled with notes that were never meant to be reviewed. She answers questions before they are asked. She finishes prayers silently, before we speak them. She asked why we bury truth under hymns. One scribe requested reassignment. Another stopped writing entirely. The ledger developed a habit. It would not remain closed. Each morning, it was found open to a different page, always blank except for a single sentence written in ink no one admitted using. You cannot own what remembers itself. The rector ordered fasting. It didn't help. Students reported dreams they shared, word for word. Long corridors, locked rooms, a girl standing at the far end, not calling out, just waiting. One student recognized her. He had never seen her awake. He resigned that afternoon and entered silence. The seminary physician attempted isolation. Subject E was moved to the lowest level, below classrooms, below storage, into a room originally built for something else. The door had no handle on the inside. That night, the bell rang by itself. At 3:17 a.m. And for the first time, voices were heard answering it. The lower room predated the seminary. Stone walls, no windows. Symbols half chiseled away, replaced by scripture verses that did not match their chapters. Subject E was placed there for her own safety. She did not resist. A cot was brought in. A Bible. A bucket of water. No guard volunteered to stay. Instead, the church instituted a rotation. No one allowed to remain near the door longer than 15 minutes. Because proximity changed people. One novice reported sudden memories that weren't his, standing on an auction block, feeling hands measure him, hearing bids spoken like weather. Another vomited after claiming the room felt crowded. The rector finally descended himself. He stayed 9 minutes. When he returned, he ordered the stairwell sealed after dusk. That night, the town experienced its first disappearance. A woman who cleaned the seminary kitchens failed to return home. Her shoes were found neatly placed at the riverbank. No signs of struggle. No body. The following night, a dockworker vanished. Then a bookkeeper. All 3 had passed the seminary door that week. Whispers returned to the square. They said the girl wasn't cursed. They said she was collecting something. Inside the sealed stairwell, faint marks appeared on the stone steps. Not scratches. Tallies. Someone was counting. On July 2nd, 1852, the rector attempted confession. He entered the lower room alone, carrying holy oil and prepared scripture. Witnesses heard him begin the rite. They never heard him finish. What survives is his written account, discovered years later among private papers never meant for the archive. She asked me why my God required chains before mercy. I told her suffering was a test. She asked who designed it. I said man did. She smiled. Not cruelly. Patiently. She said, then man will be tested. The rector fled the room. By morning, his hair had gone white. He resigned the following day and left the state. The seminary replaced him within a week. Subject, he was never mentioned in the transition documents. Officially, she did not exist. But every night, the bell continued to ring. Once, at 3:17 a.m. And every time, someone new woke knowing something they hadn't before. Not secrets, truths. In August of 1852, the Natchez auctions paused. No announcement. No decree. Men simply stopped showing up. Buyers reported sudden illness when approaching the square. Horses refused to step onto the cobblestones. Clerks claimed their hands cramped when holding bills of sale. Trade rerouted to other towns. Natchez declined. And at the center of it all stood a seminary that would not explain itself. That same month, the oak placard disappeared. In its place, a new sign appeared, posted anonymously on the seminary gate. No threat, just a sentence. You taught her what ownership meant. Now she is teaching you what it costs. Inside the lower room, the tallies reached 43. And subject E began humming hymns she had never been taught. The church could hide a girl. It could not hide a pattern. By September of 1852, word reached Washington, not through rumor, but through disrupted commerce. Shipping schedules altered. Insurance claims spiked. Entire ledgers of trade from Natchez went blank. When money goes silent, authority listens. 2 federal men arrived by steamboat. They did not announce themselves as investigators. Their papers described them as inspectors of irregular assets. They requested access to the seminary. They were denied. That night, one of them woke convinced he was late for an auction that had never existed. He dressed in the dark, left his room, and was found hours later standing at the river, repeating a name he could not place. The second man wrote in his report, "This town behaves like a witness that has already testified and regrets it." The seminary was ordered to comply. They descended into the lower room with official seals and neutral language. Subject E stood when they entered, not in fear, in recognition. One inspector asked her name. She answered, "You will not write it correctly." The men exchanged glances. She was transferred that same day, quietly, under federal supervision, to a facility listed in records only as the Haven. No destination marked. No return date assigned. The seminary breathed again. It should not have. The Haven was not a prison. It was described as a protective moral institution for unplaceable persons. It sat on land once owned by a defunct religious order, miles from any town, connected by a road that changed names halfway through. Staff rotated every 6 weeks. No one stayed longer. Subject E was given a new designation. Case 41B. Her file was thinner than expected, because nothing stayed written. Notes faded. Ink bled through pages and disappeared. Dates rearranged themselves. A matron recorded. She asked me what year I thought it was. When I answered, she said, "That is not the year that owns you." Residents near the Haven reported quiet disturbances. Clock stopping. Dogs refusing to enter certain fields. A sensation of being observed by something that already knew you. Inside, Case 41B did not attempt escape. She did not need to. Staff members began leaving on their own. Some resigned without notice. Some walked into the woods and were never found. And some stayed, but stopped sleeping. By winter, the federal record keepers intervened. They classified Case 41B as an anomaly of social disruption. Her story was rewritten. In the official archive, she became many things. A sick girl, a runaway, a clerical error, a case closed due to death. All at once, multiple versions of her fate were filed simultaneously. This was not confusion. It was strategy, because every time one version was accepted, another contradicted it, with supporting documents. The truth became unstable. Historians later noticed something strange. References to the Natchez decline appeared in unrelated reports across different states. Identical language. Identical phrasing. As if copied. As if something wanted to be remembered, but only indirectly. At the Haven, Case 41B began asking to attend church. Not services. Archives. She requested to read burial records. When denied, she said, "They do not stay buried if they are counted." After that, the staff stopped refusing her. On February 3, 1853, the Haven conducted its annual census. Every resident, every staff member, every locked door. The numbers did not match. 3 people were missing. No exits breached. No disturbances logged. Case 41B was found in her room, seated, hands folded. She asked one question. "Did you remember to count yourselves?" That night, the facility bell rang. Not once, but 43 times. The same number once carved beneath the seminary. By morning, the census ledger contained a final entry written in a careful, unfamiliar hand. Ownership ends when memory refuses permission. The federal men returned. The Haven was closed, and Case 41B vanished from all remaining documents. Not escaped, not deceased, removed, as if she had completed something. The letters arrived without stamps. No postmarks. No return address. They were delivered by hand, slipped beneath doors, or placed inside Bibles, decades after the Haven closed. Recipients had one thing in common: inheritance, plantation deeds, seminary endowments, shipping lines founded in the 1850s, men and women who benefited, indirectly, comfortably, from systems they no longer named. Each letter contained a single sentence, written in the same careful hand. What you own remembers who paid for it. Some dismissed it as a prank. Others burned the paper immediately. A few kept it. Those who kept it reported the same change. Family stories stopped aligning. Portraits seemed unfamiliar. Diaries contradicted themselves. Ancestral names appeared twice, then vanished. One Mississippi family sealed off a room after discovering tally marks carved behind a wardrobe. Another reported a recurring dream shared by 3 generations, an auction block with no bids, and a girl standing where the chains should be. None of these accounts reached newspapers. They circulated quietly, like warnings meant only for those who could understand them. In the 1880s, a series of sermons spread across Southern churches. They were never officially titled, but congregations remembered the message. They spoke of false ownership, of inherited silence, of sins that did not belong to the sinner, but still demanded recognition. One preacher in Alabama ended his sermon with a line that caused half his congregation to leave. He said, "There was a girl we tried to sell once. She learned our language better than we did." He resigned the next day. In Louisiana, a church burned its own archives after a visiting minister requested access to records from 1852. No fire report was filed. No investigation followed, because by then, the country was busy remembering other things. Wars, expansion, progress, and forgetting is easiest when history provides alternatives. Attempts were made to recover her name. Historians in the early 1900s found references, crossed out, misspelled, replaced by symbols. Each attempt to restore it failed. Ink ran. Typewriter keys jammed. One archivist noted that every time he tried to transcribe the name, he forgot it immediately afterward. He wrote, "It is not erased. It refuses to be held." By 1912, the case was categorized as folklore, a moral fable, a cautionary tale about guilt and imagination. But folklore does not leave paper trails. This one did, just not where anyone wanted to look. The final credible account appears in 1924. A woman matching her description was seen standing outside a closed seminary, different state, same architecture. She wore plain clothes. No chains. No escort. A janitor claimed she asked one question before walking away. "Do you still teach ownership here?" The building was converted into offices the following year. During renovations, workers discovered a sealed room beneath the foundation. No remains, just tallies on the wall. 43. The same number, over and over. And carved beneath them, "I was never yours." By mid-20th century, the story of Subject E had dissolved into scattered whispers. Historians cataloged auctions, ledgers, and seminary records, but every attempt to reconstruct her life failed. Family lineages had vanished. Official documents listed her as never existing. Yet the effects lingered. Descendants of those who had once claimed ownership reported dreams, premonitions, and inexplicable fears. One descendant wrote, "I cannot touch money without remembering hands that were not mine." Another recorded that doors would refuse to stay locked, and clocks would stop precisely at 3:17 a.m. Her legacy was not in her life, but in the imprint of knowledge she left behind. The country had forgotten, deliberately or by coincidence, but her presence persisted, an undercurrent of accountability. Several Southern churches retained hints of her existence. Sermons, locked vestries, and private journals all hinted at moral irregularities, but no record was public. When visiting scholars sought access, doors remained mysteriously closed. One seminary historian noted, "All references vanish. Every citation, every note, disappears as if the building itself resists exposure." She was never mentioned by name, but her impact on institutional memory could not be erased. Where she walked, silence followed. Where she had been kept, fear persisted. Where she had been sold, or refused to be sold, history wavered. Her story was a reminder that some truths do not belong to the ledger, or the auction, or even the law. They belong to memory itself. The oak placard resurfaced sporadically across the South. Different towns, different decades. Same carved warning. Touch her and die. Some dismissed it as legend. Some preserved it as curiosity. But each time, those who encountered it reported the same sensation. Walls shrinking, air thickening. A cold understanding that ownership is never simple, and some lives cannot be possessed. Over the years, the phrasing evolved in private letters, diaries, and faded sermons. Ownership is a lie we tell ourselves. Some debts are counted by memory, not money. The warning became less about fear of death and more about fear of forgetting. And in those who remembered, the lesson endured. Subject E, or Case 41B, or whatever name history would deny her, was never sold. She existed at the intersection of ownership and impossibility. She forced those who tried to possess her to confront themselves. She revealed the fractures in law, faith, commerce, and memory. She reminded America that some truths are too dangerous to hold, and yet too persistent to erase. Her story concludes not with death, nor capture, nor silence. It concludes with the lingering sense that she continues, somewhere, in records that do not exist, in towns that deny her, in hearts that remember her. She is a shadow on the ledger, a voice in the vestry, a tally on a wall. And whenever someone reads this story, pauses, and feels an uneasy recognition, she is present again. She was never yours, and perhaps she never will be.